Do you really believe you know the rules of the game? Since childhood, we've been told it was enough to be good, smile at everyone, and hope the universe would reciprocate. But politics guided by reality, not ideals, has always operated differently. Behind the scenes, it's not the most virtuous who wins, but rather those who master the invisible instincts that drive people. The end justifies the means when the fight is for survival, and those who ignore this law become just another disposable piece on the board. Machiavelli didn't write to flatter kings. He wrote to reveal secrets few have the courage to accept. And one of those secrets is brutal. It's better to be feared than loved, as long as one avoids being hated. Why? Because love is fickle. It changes with the wind. Silent respect, born of fear and admiration, endures. But how can this be generated without falling into hatred? This is where invisible weapons come in, the appearance of virtue, the calculated use of force, and constant adaptability. Look around you. Who seems to command the conversations? Who effortlessly attracts attention? They're not the smartest nor the kindest. They're the ones who understand the game of perception. They know when to appear and when to disappear. They know when to smile and when to remain silent. They know above all that decisions based on real human nature are more effective than idealistic speeches. And while you're trying to please, they've already conquered the space you thought was yours. The question is, are you prepared to see the world as it is? Seduction isn't just romantic charm, but a psychological mechanism capable of bending wills. Unshakable confidence isn't the absence of fear, but courage trained not to waver. True power isn't shouting, but calculated silence. All of this makes up an anatomy of influence that few study, but which silently governs every human relationship. This knowledge is uncomfortable because it dismantles illusions. It forces you to admit that the game was never fair. But it also liberates, because it shows that you don't have to be born privileged to become untouchable. Virtù and fortuna, skill and luck, can be cultivated by anyone who chooses to look deeper and act strategically. And once you understand these mechanisms, their presence will never be ignored again. What you're about to hear isn't shallow theory, but a dive into subtle weapons that change destinies. Seduction, confidence, nonchalance, mystery, image, timing, and silence. Each of them, if applied precisely, transforms someone ordinary into an unstoppable force. The question is, will you just watch this knowledge pass before you, or will you use it to become someone no one can touch? When we talk about seduction, many think of romance or romantic conquest. But the truth is that seduction is, above all, a strategy of psychological power. It's the ability to arouse fascination, curiosity, and admiration in others, whether in a boardroom, a job interview, or even at an informal dinner. Great leaders throughout history understood that seduction doesn't mean deceiving, but creating magnetism. Machiavelli already realized that in politics guided by reality, not ideals, those who win hearts and minds through charm become far more dangerous than those who instill fear through brute force. Look at figures like Steve Jobs. It wasn't enough to introduce a cell phone. He created a field of desire around an object. This is seduction applied to influence. It's not just about speaking well, but about cultivating the appearance of virtue, as if every gesture were carefully orchestrated to seem natural. Here, the end justifies the means. When the goal is to move people toward a vision, it's more valuable to arouse passion than to spout technical arguments. And look, we're not talking about shallow manipulation, but about a virtù and fortuna that align to shape the charisma of someone who knows how to use even silence as a weapon. In practice, anyone can apply this. Want an example? Imagine you need to negotiate a raise at work. If you arrive demanding it, you might be ignored. But if, beforehand, you create an atmosphere of admiration around your presence, indirectly demonstrating results and letting others comment on your competence, the conversation changes completely. The calculated use of force lies in deciding when to reveal concrete data and when to simply let perception work for you. Is it better to be feared than loved? Sometimes yes, but when respect is tinged with seduction, it rarely turns into hatred. Another point is that seduction requires constant adaptability. No one seduces in the same way in every context. A political leader speaking to the people doesn't speak the same way the same leader speaks to bankers. The language changes, but the essence remains: to arouse desire. That's why loyal armies aren't made up of just armed soldiers, but of conquered minds who follow out of fascination. And see, this is a decision based on true human nature. Everyone wants to be attracted to something greater. Everyone seeks to be close to what shines. The secret lies in understanding what shine you convey and how to use it strategically. Perhaps you've noticed this. There are people who walk into a room and, without saying a word, capture everyone's attention. It's not about physical beauty, but about presence. Reality-driven politics shows that this kind of magnetism is built with small choices. The way they look, the tone of voice, their calm in the face of chaos. Seduction, at this level, is an invisible shield that protects and, at the same time, a sword that opens doors. But this is only the first step. For there is no point in seducing if the confidence that sustains this aura wavers at the first criticism. And this is where we come to the next point: unshakable confidence. Unshakable confidence doesn't come from nowhere. It's built brick by brick from decisions based on true human nature. It's the stance that remains firm even when everything around seems about to crumble. Think of a chess player facing an aggressive opponent. While the other expends energy attacking, he observes, breathes, and waits for the right moment. This is the calculated use of force, not through haste, but through serenity. And here Machiavelli would be blunt. It's better to be feared than loved when trust is put to the test, because those who fear their solidity rarely dare to challenge it. Confidence doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means not being paralyzed by it. That's why truly strong leaders train their minds like their own loyal army, disciplining their thoughts and emotions. A simple example: a speaker facing a packed auditorium. Their heart races, their voice may tremble, but if they breathe deeply, maintain a steady gaze, and speak with conviction, everyone perceives the appearance of virtue, even if deep down they're dealing with insecurities. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, shows that it's not necessary to eliminate flaws, but to learn to camouflage them. And how do you build this unshakable confidence? Practice, repetition, and gradual exposure to discomfort. Those who run from criticism never learn to deal with it. Those who shy away from failure never understand the virtue and fortune that arise when you make mistakes and rise stronger. Want to practice? Start by putting yourself in small situations that challenge your confidence. Speak in public to 5 people, then 10, then 50. Study negotiation. Read authors like Dale Carnegie or even Napoleon Hill, who transformed self-confidence into power manuals. Each step builds mental armor. Each failure teaches you that the end justifies the means, as long as the goal is evolution. There's also the invisible side of this confidence: control over one's own narrative. A confident person doesn't over-explain themselves, doesn't try to justify every move. Instead, they use silence as a tool. Those who rush to prove themselves right demonstrate weakness. Those who stand firm with constant adaptability convey security without saying a word. This is true reality-driven politics, demonstrating that you don't depend on others' approval, but that you act with your own conviction. This is where trust and power begin to intertwine, because those who trust you don't need to convince others constantly. Note, in any social or professional circle, those who exude confidence attract respect and even loyalty. It's not about arrogance, but about posture, and posture is what differentiates those who are easily manipulated from those who dictate the pace of the game. When someone conveys the certainty that they won't be shaken, even criticism becomes useless. And this is fascinating. Confidence, when unshakable, not only protects, but also expands influence. But for this confidence to truly become power, it needs to transform into something greater, something that goes beyond individual posture. This is where the next point arises: true power. True power doesn't shout. It doesn't need to impose itself excessively. It manifests itself in the subtlety of those who control themselves before seeking to control others. Think of someone who walks into a room and everyone stops to listen, not because they're threatening, but because their mere presence carries authority. This is the kind of strength Machiavelli understood, a policy guided by reality, not ideals. The end justifies the means when one seeks mastery over one's own emotions and perceptions, because that is the power that cannot be taken away. Better to be feared than loved, perhaps. But even better is when fear comes from the silent respect one's stance inspires. A clear example is the difference between an authoritarian boss and a strategic leader. The former commands, but needs to shout to be obeyed. The latter inspires obedience, even in silence. This is where the appearance of virtue comes in, knowing when to show generosity, when to appear approachable, and when to withdraw. The calculated use of force is not brutality, but intelligence, cutting where necessary, protecting where important, and never wasting energy. This is the virtù and fortuna of those who understand that decisions based on real human nature are much more lasting than orders based solely on positions or titles. In everyday life, true power appears in small things. A negotiator who remains calm while the other explodes. A lawyer who listens silently while the opponent loses his arguments. A person who, when faced with an offense, chooses not to react, but to respond with time and precision. These choices seem simple, but they are weapons. Loyal, self-made armies are not made up solely of flesh and blood soldiers. They are formed of habits, discipline, and self-control. Politics guided by reality shows that those who dominate these internal armies automatically earn respect. The curious thing is that true power also knows how to disguise itself. In many situations, appearing fragile is the best defense. It's the classic game of appearance of virtue, letting others believe they have the upper hand, only to, at the right moment, reveal their true strength. Constant adaptability is key. It's not the strongest who survive, but those who know how to change form without losing their essence. The end justifies the means in this sense, appearing smaller to gain greater space. This is a lesson many ignore, but one that has shaped entire empires and still governs work relationships, politics, and even homes today. And understand, true power never lies in what is immediately apparent, but in what is strategically hidden. Calmness, security, silence, all of this acts as invisible armor. Those observing from the outside see control, but those who experience it up close perceive influence. That's why those who master this art seem untouchable. But there's an even more refined detail, an almost secret source of power: strategic indifference. It's not about coldness, but about appearing immune to what's happening, maintaining control of the narrative while others burn energy trying to understand. And that's exactly what comes next. Nonchalance, or strategic indifference, is one of the most subtle weapons of power. It's the art of appearing unfazed, even when the world around you crumbles. Those who master this quality convey a silent message: I don't need to react to prove I'm in control. Machiavelli would surely smile here, because this is politics guided by reality, not ideals. The end justifies the means when one learns to conceal intentions while maintaining composure. Better to be feared than loved? Yes. But when indifference becomes magnetic, fear mingles with admiration. Here's how this works in practice. Imagine a work group discussion. Everyone gets heated, raises their voices and interrupts one another. And you keep your gaze steady, your breathing calm, and speak only when the silence becomes unbearable for others. This is the calculated use of force. Not the force of shouting, but the force of silence that weighs more than 1,000 words. The appearance of virtue here is almost theatrical. You seem immune to the chaos, even though inside you're observing every detail. Virtue and fortune meet precisely at this point. The luck of those who know how to wait for the right moment. The great secret of nonchalance is that it creates mystery. When someone reacts immediately, the other understands how to manipulate them. But when someone appears indifferent, they become impenetrable. People begin to ask, what could he be thinking? Why didn't he flinch? This space of doubt is pure power. Decisions based on true human nature show that human beings fear the unknown. And therefore, those who appear indecipherable attract almost instinctive respect. Loyal, self-made armies may win visible battles, but it is the impenetrable general who wins silent wars. Nonchalance isn't apathy, it's not caring, it's strategy. You can care deeply but choose not to show it. Think of a poker player. They might have the best hand or be about to lose everything, but their face remains the same. This is constant adaptability applied to real life. Knowing when to display emotion and when to hide it. It's politics guided by reality, not romantic ideals. After all, those who show all their feelings become an open book, and open books are easy to read and manipulate. By cultivating nonchalance, you realize that less is more. A short answer can be more devastating than a speech. Silence can generate more anxiety than an insult. And this apparent calm creates the ground for true emotional restraint. Because it's not enough to appear indifferent, you must, in fact, learn to control your internal reactions so that the mask doesn't slip. And this is the next crucial point. How to manage your own emotions, control impulses, and choose precisely what to reveal and what to hide. If strategic indifference is the mask, emotional control is the true face behind it. Without it, any disguise falls at the first intense pressure. Machiavelli understood well. Decisions based on true human nature require inner control. After all, the end justifies the means when it comes to preserving one's position and influence. Those who cannot control their emotions end up becoming puppets of their surroundings. Better to be feared than loved? Yes, but those who cannot control their own anger, their own fear, end up being hated instinctively. And here, avoiding being hated is as important as being respected. Consider the example of an investor in the midst of a financial crisis. While everyone panics, selling assets and accepting losses, the cool-headed investor observes, calculates, and decides with a calculated use of force. He doesn't rush, waiting for the right time to buy at low prices. This is policy guided by reality, not ideals. The appearance of virtue in this case is to appear serene in the face of collapse. It doesn't matter if your heart races inside. Self-control ensures composure. Virtue and fortune meet precisely in this self-control. Fortune only smiles on those who don't allow themselves to be blinded by despair. And how do you practice this? A practical exercise. Practice pausing. Whenever you feel the urge to respond immediately, count to 5 in your head. It seems simple, but that space between impulse and action is golden. This small interval transforms reaction into response. Another practice is exposure to controlled discomfort. From taking cold showers to speaking in public without complete preparation, each challenge serves to strengthen your own loyal army, the one fighting within you. Constant adaptability emerges precisely here. Those who learn to control reactions in smaller settings become unbeatable in larger arenas. It's worth remembering that emotional control doesn't mean repressing until you explode. It means managing. It's like a general who doesn't send all his soldiers onto the battlefield at once. He chooses the time, the place, the number. This is the calculated use of force applied to emotions. Sometimes it's strategic to show firmness, sometimes to show vulnerability. The appearance of virtue can also include tears at the right time, as long as they're used as a tool and not as weakness. After all, politics guided by reality shows that even feelings can be converted into power, as long as they're well managed. Over time, those who master emotional containment notice a curious effect. Others become predictable, while you remain impenetrable. This unpredictability creates respect and at the same time mystery, because deep down, true power lies not only in controlling others, but in being impossible to decipher. And this is where we enter an even deeper layer, the art of becoming mysterious and impenetrable, where no one can anticipate your next moves. Few weapons are as powerful as the aura of mystery. When someone doesn't reveal everything, they become impossible to predict, and human beings fear what they cannot decipher. Machiavelli already pointed out that politics guided by reality, not ideals, requires precisely this, not revealing oneself completely. The end justifies the means when it comes to keeping one's intentions hidden until the last moment. Better to be feared than loved if the fear comes from the unknown. Because when no one truly knows what you think, act, or intend, you become untouchable. See how this applies in everyday life. Imagine two candidates for promotion. One speaks openly about their plans, their projects, their desires. The other shares only what is necessary, leaves calculated clues, but never reveals the full picture. Who arouses more curiosity? Who generates more speculation behind the scenes? Exactly, the mysterious one. This is the calculated use of force at its most elegant. It's not about hiding completely, but about choosing what to reveal. It's the appearance of virtue mixed with strategic silence. It's virtu and fortuna, shaped by the ability to transform gaps into power. Mystery also acts as armor. When someone opens up too much, they become vulnerable. When they become impenetrable, no one knows where to strike. Loyal, self-made armies don't betray their plans to the enemy. They just execute them. And so it should be with your decisions based on true human nature. Reveal only when necessary, and even then, only partially. Constant adaptability is essential here, because sometimes mystery arises from a look, sometimes from a vague answer, and other times from complete silence. The key is to vary, so that they never create a pattern around you. Interestingly, being mysterious doesn't mean being cold or distant. On the contrary, it can even include charm and magnetism. An artist like Leonardo DiCaprio, for example, talks little about his personal life, and that's precisely what makes him all the more fascinating to the public. A scarcity of information breeds desire. This is a policy guided by reality applied to the social realm. Give enough to maintain attention, but never enough to completely satisfy. The end justifies the means because by controlling access, you also control the narrative. And the more impenetrable you become, the more your value increases. People begin to measure your every word as if you were an oracle. The perception is clear. Those who are not easily deciphered appear more intelligent, stronger, more worthy of respect. But remember, mystery alone is not enough. You need to refine how you are perceived, because what the eyes perceive can be even more powerful than the truth. And this is where we come to the next point: perception and image as silent weapons of influence. Perception always trumps reality. What matters is not just who you are, but how you are perceived. Machiavelli already warned, politics guided by reality, not ideals, requires cultivating the appearance of virtue, even if it doesn't fully correspond to practice. After all, the end justifies the means when it comes to image. Better to be feared than loved, but never underestimate the power of appearing just, wise, or generous. This combination of fear and respect builds invisible walls that make someone practically untouchable. Consider the case of public figures. Many leaders have won over crowds not through the coherence of their actions, but through the narrative they built around themselves. This narrative is the calculated use of force applied to communication. Loyal, self-made armies are born not only of weapons, but of symbols, gestures, and images that generate identification. It's virtù and fortuna working together. Virtù to shape your posture, fortuna to be in the right place at the right time, in front of those who need to see it. Decisions based on real human nature show that people are guided more by appearances than by reality. And don't think this is a privilege of big names. In everyday life, your image is constantly judged. At work, on social media, even in casual encounters. Want a practical example? A professional who arrives late, disheveled, and lacking energy conveys carelessness, even if they are a genius. Another, on the other hand, who presents themselves with firmness, a direct gaze, and strategic silence, appears competent before even proving anything. This is politics guided by reality. It's using perception as both a sword and a shield. Building this image shouldn't be static, but flexible. Constant adaptability is crucial because different contexts require different masks. Sometimes it's strategic to appear humble, other times it's ruthless. The secret lies in understanding that every detail communicates. The tone of your voice, the pause in mid-sentence, the way you walk to a meeting table. Small gestures can carry more weight than long speeches. The end justifies the means, because the right image at the right time opens doors that would otherwise remain closed to the simple, naked truth. And the more you master perception, the more you realize that time and presence are crucial ingredients. Excessive exposure erodes your image. Becoming rare multiplies your value. This is why many wise men and leaders knew exactly when to appear and when to disappear. And this is the next step we need to explore: timing and scarcity as strategic elements to amplify desire, respect, and power. Knowing when to act is as important as knowing how to act. Machiavelli once said that politics guided by reality, not ideals, requires not only strength but also timing. The end justifies the means when the move is made at the right time, neither too soon nor too late. Better to be feared than loved when your presence is strategic, but even more powerful is to become rare. Scarcity breeds value. When someone is always available, always accessible, their impact diminishes. Calculated absence, however, breeds desire, insecurity, and respect. Think of artists who disappear for years and return with a masterpiece, or of leaders who say little, but when they do, everyone stops to listen. This is the calculated use of force applied to time. Loyal, self-made armies don't waste ammunition unnecessarily. They wait for the right opening to strike. Virtue and fortune come together here. Virtue to know how to wait, fortune to recognize when the moment has arrived. Decisions based on real human nature show that scarcity creates the illusion of importance. And this illusion can be more powerful than any sustained action. Want to apply this to your daily life? Try limiting your social media presence. Instead of posting every day without purpose, post less but with impact. Or at work, Instead of speaking in every meeting, save your words for key moments. This constant adaptability makes each gesture carry weight. The silence of those who speak little is more deafening than the noise of those who speak too much. Politics guided by reality makes it clear, to be rare is to be remembered, and being remembered is a form of power. The interesting thing is that timing applies not only to big movements, but also to small interactions. Responding immediately can convey anxiety. Responding calmly and with a pause creates a sense of control. Scarcity in this case isn't a definitive absence, but a calculated delay. It's like an actor's dramatic pause. The audience leans forward, waiting for the next line. And this anticipation generates more impact than the speech itself. The end justifies the means because this silent pause already shapes perceptions. Timing and scarcity shape the terrain on which power is built. Those who master this art never appear desperate, never appear needy. On the contrary, they convey the impression that the world needs them, not the other way around. But be careful, mastering timing is only effective if accompanied by an even more subtle skill, that of responding rather than reacting. Because being rare isn't enough. You have to be precise when you finally manifest. The difference between reacting and responding is the difference between being controlled and being in control. Reacting is instinctive. It's letting others pull the strings and decide your next move. Responding is deliberately choosing, calmly and calculatedly, how to act. Machiavelli knew that decisions based on real human nature require this strategic pause. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, shows that those who react become predictable. Those who respond become enigmatic, almost impenetrable. The end justifies the means because the silence between provocation and response is in itself a demonstration of power. Imagine a simple situation. Someone provokes you in public. Most would react immediately, either defending themselves or attacking back. But the strategist observes, waits, and responds at the right moment. Perhaps not immediately, but later when the response will have more impact. This is the calculated use of force, conserving energy until each word is a well-aimed arrow. Is it better to be feared than loved? Yes, but even more powerful is when fear is born of doubt. What will he do now? This unpredictability is a weapon of influence that few master. Responding rather than reacting also builds trust. People who give in to anger, pride, or fear end up conveying fragility. Those who respond calmly, even amid chaos, earn respect. It's like a general who doesn't send his own loyal armies to every skirmish. He waits for the main attack, conserves resources, and chooses the terrain. Virtue and fortune intertwine here. Virtue in the discipline of restraint, fortune in seizing the right moment to turn the tide. This combination creates natural authority. In practice, a simple technique is the conscious pause. Before speaking or acting, take a deep breath. This pause disarms expectations. In negotiations, for example, silence after a proposal can make the other party feel insecure, revealing information you wouldn't otherwise have access to. This is the appearance of virtue in action. You appear calm and rational even if inside you're frantically analyzing. Constant adaptability means adjusting the timing of your response, sometimes seconds, sometimes days. The key is to not be predictable. Those who respond instead of reacting gain time, clarity, and respect. But there's something even more powerful, the ability to say nothing. Silence, when used intentionally, is more devastating than any sentence. And this is where we come to the next point, power through silence, that invisible weapon that intrigues, destabilizes, and conquers at the same time. Silence is one of the most feared and least understood weapons of power. It provokes insecurity, generates mystery, and forces others to fill the void with their own interpretations. Machiavelli would understand well. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, shows that it is often more strategic to remain silent than to speak. The end justifies the means when silence preserves one's position or weakens one's adversary. Better to be feared than loved, perhaps. But even better is to be feared without having to raise one's voice, simply letting the absence of words speak volumes. Consider the impact in a debate. While one side talks non-stop, trying to convince, the other listens silently, with a firm gaze and unwavering posture. Who conveys more power? Loyal, self-contained armies don't need to fire all their arrows at once. Sometimes it's enough to show they have them in reserve. This is the calculated use of force applied to communication. Virtù and fortuna reveal themselves precisely in this domain. Fortune favors those who don't surrender their weapons in the first clash. The appearance of virtue here is to appear calm and reflective, when in fact silence is already an offensive move. In everyday life, silence has practical and immediate applications. In a negotiation, a prolonged pause can make the other side give in more quickly, simply to break the discomfort. In relationships, intentional silence can be more educational than any sermon. And at work, knowing how to remain silent in the face of gossip or provocation prevents your image from being tarnished. Decisions based on true human nature show that human beings fear a communicative vacuum. Silence creates tension, and tension is fertile ground for influence. But silence also needs to be measured with constant adaptability. Excessive silence can feel like apathy. Silence at the right moment transforms into authority. It's like a conductor who holds the baton for a few seconds too long, making the entire orchestra hold its breath. This pause isn't empty, it's charged with intention. The end justifies the means, because every second of silence forces others to lean forward, trying to decipher what comes next. The power in this case isn't in speaking, but in making others want you to speak. And in the end, silence serves as the synthesis of all the previous strategies: seduction, confidence, power, defiance, emotional control, mystery, image, and timing. It unites everything in a single, invisible gesture. Those who master silence don't need to explain themselves, don't need to justify themselves, don't need to compete for attention. Their presence is enough. But perhaps the greatest provocation is this: silence isn't the end of the conversation, but an invitation to a new way of seeing human nature. And it is precisely this invitation that paves the way for the introduction of our central theme: how to use human nature to become untouchable. Now that you've gone through each of these strategies, tell me, will you continue believing in the same illusions the world pushes, or will you choose to use human nature to your advantage? Because politics guided by reality, not ideals, leaves no room for innocence. The end justifies the means when the goal is your own freedom. Better to be feared than loved, but never ignored. And those who learn to play with virtù and fortuna become a presence impossible to erase. Look at your life today. How many times have you reacted when you should have waited? How many times have you explained yourself when silence would have said it all? How many times have you been too available when you could have created scarcity? Every detail matters, because your image is the sword and shield that shape how the world sees you. And believe me, whoever controls this perception also controls the course of their own story. But none of this is any use if you don't apply it. Knowledge without practice is just another forgotten book on the shelf. So I ask, which of these weapons will you test first? Will you start with emotional restraint, with subtle seduction, or with the silence that disarms effortlessly? It all depends on your choice, and each choice opens a new path to power. And remember, becoming untouchable is not a destiny reserved for the few, but a conscious decision to train, apply, and refine every move. It's a policy guided by reality, not ideals. It's knowing that the end justifies the means when the goal is to free oneself from the invisible manipulations that have always governed this world. If you felt something shift within you during this video, then you know the next step. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and continue this journey with me. Because here, with each new encounter, you learn not only how to survive, but how to become someone no one can bring down.